Nerds International proudly presents
Alpine, the fourth realm of Earth, a world of fantasy adventure awaiting your imagination.
Warp Shell, a universe in ruin. Countless heroic tales waiting to be weaved through space and time.
Ghost Mountain, a place caught between heaven and hell, filled with fireside tales of the Wild West. These are the worlds of Index Card RPG, and this is a podcast about those worlds.
Welcome to the Threats, Treats, and Timers podcast, episode 7. I am one of your hosts, Gary, aka the Murder Hobo, and I am here as always with none other than Victor Diaz, the man, the myth, the legend.
Y'all ready for this?
Tonight we're going to be talking Core 2.0 shizzle. We got the dirty little PDF in our hands and the books are soon to come, so I'm pretty excited about that. And we're just going to sort of go over the actual finalized changes that are coming out in Index Card RPG Second Edition. Victor, my man, how was your gaming week? Did you get anything done?
I got absolutely nothing done because I was on what we call strike until I saw Core 2.0, and thank God it came on Friday because I was done. I was done waiting. I am so glad it is here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the one and only Victor Ezra Diaz. How's everybody doing? I hope you guys had a great week. We've been having a very a hectic and stressful week waiting on this birth of Core 2.0. Thank you, Hankerin, for all the work that you have done in Runehammer games.
Yeah, no gaming, eh? You pulled the plug and said that's it, hung out with the wife?
Nope. I said I'm putting a hold on everything. The most I did was put together a couple of miniature models, and that's about it. I just said, screw it. I need a break because the stress was driving me crazy. Man, I had so many fingers and so many pots for Index Core role-playing game. You know, I have like 101 conversions going on at one time. I have multiple podcasts, and I said, screw it all. I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to rest my mind and, explode. And then almost had a heart attack and drove the car off the road when I saw somebody post it Friday morning. I think it was you who told me, you posted a message and said, hey, Core 2.0 is on. And I was like, stop, pull over. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what's happening with this. So
that was about 2 seconds. I texted you 2 seconds after I went on drive-through and screamed at it for about 10 minutes on my cell phone trying to figure out how to download the PDF.
Like, download,
man.
Download
it was
now.
Crazy.
Yeah,
well, that sucks, buddy. I'm sad that Hankerin really sort of just put your brakes on for you. He pulled the e-brake while you were driving down the road.
I didn't hit nobody, thankfully, but I got it downloaded, so that's the most important part. I managed to skip through the most of it within an hour of getting that post. I literally went through it cover to cover, just kind of blinking at the pages and looking at the stuff that Hankerin said he was going to add, stuff that he had changed, particularly since everybody knows that I play Ezra Harden, the fragment. I was looking at how spells changed, the spell, whiz powers, intelligence powers, spellcaster options. Some of that stuff was in Core 1, but Core 2.0 really kind of cleans it up a little bit. Lots of fun stuff in there, man. I haven't even gone through the primers yet in any kind of detail to see if the adventures have changed or if any of that has been cleaned up. But I have seen a few little changes, a few little different pictures and setups here, so I'm really looking forward to digging into it. And I think that's what we're going to talk about tonight, right?
Yes, we are. Core 2.0, what the actual new changes were. I got to spend an evening hanging out with the second best VTT Fantasy Grounds. I played a little Savage Worlds XCOM. It was awesome. I played a support character named Lieutenant Strings, and we had to take down some aliens in a little town called Princeton in British Columbia, which is about an hour away from where I live right now. I was up there last year driving through the mountains hunting deer, but unfortunately we didn't get anything. We seriously whaled some aliens, man. It was awesome. There was a lot of them, too. So we went into this hotel lobby, started doing some blasting. Some guys came in the back door. The guns were fired. Critical hits were blasted away. The elevator, or escalator, which is the stairs that go up by themselves, got shut down. And yeah, man, it was so much fun. It was awesome. I can't wait for round 2. It was really good. He's going to do, hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll get a round 2 out of that deal. But the final battle was fought against this alien Supreme Commander and his, I think he was called a Muton or something like that, but he was like a big Commander Muton. And the Supreme Commander guy was like, basically he was a gray with a big glowy red head. And so we run into this room and somebody shotgun blasted the big Muton guy and like just exploded all over the place. Some like 30 or 40 points of damage through acing dice in Savage Worlds. So the last guy's up. The Supreme Commander's hiding on the other side of this like spaceship control panel, and it's my turn. I think I might have actually got to go first in the round. So I ran and jumped over the console, multi-action penalty for pulling out my battle blade, and I leaped off the console like off the top rope in wrestling, and I brought it down to bear on top of this great big bulbous head of this alien, and I started acing, and the dice just went to 26. So I got 6 wounds on the thing, and that's how we finished it up. It was awesome.
Oh man, that's epic, dude. That's awesome.
It was so much fun, dude.
Damage, man.
Yeah, so thanks to John Steve and the crew for letting me join the fray. And it's like one of the few games that I've actually ever played right through to the end. I didn't win, I sucked, but the aliens basically kicked my arse, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough game. If anyone's played any kind of XCOM, even the XCOM board game and all the versions before, it's a tough game. It'll put you through your paces.
I really do like that style of game, strategy turn-based. Even in my fantasy games, like I like that style of games. And I don't know if you've ever played Fallout, the first one, that had me hooked. I also spent the weekend working on Tabletop Simulator. I'm thinking that I'm going to start a one-shot Sunday, either ICRPG, Savage Worlds, something along those lines. Probably going to be ICRPG because it's just, I don't have to do any of the background stuff with ICRPG. So simple. And I'm probably just going to run some 9 to noon Sunday morning one-shots. Anybody can stop in, make their character. And we'll do some blasting virtual tabletop style with Tabletop Simulator. So I updated all of my Core 2.0 inside of that. That was a big job. And that's what I worked on basically over the weekend that I had off. Anyways, yeah, that's it. That was my week in a nutshell. That's what I did. It was pretty wicked, pretty epic. So yeah. I had a busy RPG weekend, dude.
You were productive, brother. You put a lot of work in there, a lot of time in there. For those of you who haven't checked out Gary's work that he's done, take a look at his video for turn.
I like to call it Tabletop Stimulator.
No, that's the drug that they give you to stay on it. Tabletop Simulator. You guys take a look at that and see what Gary's done. All the ships, all the different maps, all the cutouts, of course, from ICRPG and all the fun stuff that's out there. Absolutely awesome job, Gary. I'm looking forward to getting in on a game as soon as we can. Mm-hmm. I'll be a part of that. If you want to play on Sunday, I'll join in on that.
There's an entire table inside of that you can go. I built an ICRPG table for everybody. You can go access it. It has basically almost all the artwork. There's no core rule stuff in there. It's all like, it's full on legit. It's just artwork. So you've got the minis, the red sword inside of Tabletop Simulator if you wanted to see what that looks like in a 3D environment. And but yeah, if you want to get the gist, like it's just the maps and stuff that I edited. So if you want the gist of the Flight of the Red Sword story, you're going to have to own the PDF, which is none of the PDF or actual written work is inside of Tabletop. It's just the artwork. Thanks to Hankerin for letting me. He was like, "Go ahead, man." I'm like, sweet. So I did.
Awesome sauce. You have to cut it, paste it, and put it in there, right? I think what a lot of people don't understand too when you're on Tabletop Simulator, if you own the core rule book, you got, you're thinking to yourself, well, I'll have to get, go from the screen to my book or the screen to the PDF and flop back and forth. But you don't have to. Tabletop Simulator allows you to put what it looks like a little miniature 3D tablet that you can put on the table, and you can hover on the screen next to you, and you can actually load a PDF off of like Google Drive, OneDrive, all the different places that, you're able to store your stuff online. Just save your PDF file somewhere on your Google Drive and then go to that tablet in the world, and you can pick it up and you can reference that PDF off of there. There's lots of ways to get around it, and it's not as hard as people think. If you guys are computer savvy enough to get on and play with Tabletop Simulator, trust me, in a few minutes, maybe about an hour's worth of work, you can get everything that you need working on there when it comes to references, all your PDFs, and some of your models and some of your characters. It's actually easier than you think it is. But yeah, you've done a lot of the hard work though. You're the one who went in and recreated the Flight of the Red Sword in a 3D map, and that looks absolutely sick.
It's cool. I'm trying to think of an adventure. I think I've got so many ideas pumping through my brain right now for what I want to do, but I think the next one I'm going to do is going to be an Arabian Nights kind of a deal after I finish taking out the, right now we're going to take out the Lich Deceiver up in the Ire, in that area there. Norberg is where he's at. I'm just trying to get my brain back in the deal. Yeah, there's a guy that does some really sweet stuff. His name is Blue Sword Games on Patreon. I love his maps. His maps are so artistic. They're not overly complicated, but they're very beautiful. And one of the things that I really like about him, and what drew me to him to begin with, was he has this entire desert map pack. And I couldn't find really good desert maps anywhere. So now I'm going to set up this whole Arabian Nights deal that you can chase there'll be like deserts, and there's the pit, the maw, there's a dragon's head, there's a pyramid, like a caravan, an oasis, just tons of beautiful maps that this guy does. Blue Sword Games on Patreon, man. Toss this guy a buck. His maps are freaking fantastic. I put all of those into TTS. Anyways, let's get on to Core 2.0. I'm sure people are probably like, these two idiots are droning again. Over to the news. Let's do it.
Okay, everybody, this one's dedicated to the old country, where I used to sip on bourbon all day, slay goblins, and get some sweet loot. It's called Walking Through Alfheim. Come on. Walking through Alfheim, getting to know a wilder kind, looking for a purpose in a tavern side. I would meet you anywhere. Cold and Lagar meets the air. Tirolo Stanos, never looking behind. Yeah! Woo! Alfheim, everybody! Woo! Shit! Where's the whiskey?
All right, so section 2, into the news. We're going to take a look at ICRPG's Core 2nd Edition Black Edition, which is very beautiful, by the way. With none other than the man, the myth, the legend, the new one. Anyways, I'm going to replace Victor with him, I hope, at some point in the near future. Oh. Hankerin, what's happening?
I'm already out the door, Gary. I ain't even been here 10 episodes, and I'm already out the door.
Didn't take much. What's going on?
It's nice to know I'm easily replaceable.
Hey, good to be here, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight.
Oh, thanks for coming on the show. We've been shooting the breeze now for the last 50 some odd minutes because of something silly, and yeah. So we're going to go over the final changes in Core 2.0. Let's just get right into it. Store friendly back cover for FLGS. What was unfriendly about the last one?
Well, the original book was very abstract on the exterior. It said nothing about what it was in any way. And I know that this probably won't be shrink wrapped or anything, but that to me, if you just picked it up and kind of flipped it side to side and looked at it, you learn absolutely nothing. And it asks you to sort of open it and look inside. And that often can be enough friction to lose someone and they'll look at the next book. I mean, it's that small of a window that you have someone's sort of shelf attention. And so what I did is I made a back cover, which kind of showcases some of the art and gives you this kind of index card feel and gives you a real like super short explanation of what the hell this crazy book is anyway. And I think that'll help because I really do want to get this in local game stores this year. So I kind of liked the really abstract look of the first one. It was like a wizard's book or something, but I caved to market forces, is what you could call it. But actually, now that it's done, I really like it. It's got like a real friendly kind of feel on the back cover.
That's cool. It's gonna make its way to my friendly local gaming store, Nerd Haven, here in Abbotsford. Shout out to my boy, Big J. He has a copy of the original one that I gave him a while ago, and I told him 2nd edition was coming out. So you're getting a big chunk of my last paycheck because I bought quite a few books.
Well, and hopefully this year when I get my act together, I'm going to learn how to do some direct shipping from one bookshelf to small stores. So they'll just be able to get the books like at cost, basically. So I just need to get all my tubes and wires hooked together properly. But then you should just be able to contact me and tell me, I want 10, and we'll get them right to you at cost, so that the local bookstores can join the fun, and I'll make some negligible amount on each book. Like it'll be vastly reduced from like a consumer purchase. So it'll be basically like wholesale. So I just need to get that all figured out. But One Bookshelf does do that. So I just need to, do things. But that'll be great, because I think that's a part of the backbone of what we do, is just the store life.
What's the name of the people, the religious group that stands out there with the watchtower? Are they Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yes, they are.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think you should just start recruiting all of your fans and followers to stand outside their friendly
bicycles around with ICRPG and a little satchel.
Yeah, and instead of and you see those guys on their bikes that says like Jesus is Lord, or the end is near, or something like that. You could just say ICRPG is near, or something like that. You get some stand out there with your book or whatever on a little shelf, and have a couple well-dressed people, so that way when they walk by and they just glance at it, there'll be people there to be like, you really need to buy this, because
I don't know about this distribution model, man. It's giving me the heebie-jeebies.
Have you heard about our Lord and Savior Runehammer? The new opener leaves with Runehammer logo art by Sean Sutter. Now, mine and Victor's guess was that this was the little Runehammer insignia thing on the inside cover. How wrong are we?
So there's a black leaf page at the beginning with this red Runehammer here.
We don't even get it because it's not in the PDF. I see.
Yep, and that red Runehammer is sort of, I slightly modified Sean Sutter's art that he gave to me from Relic Blade, and that kind of is going to slowly become my kind of final Runehammer logo, because I really love everything he does, and I love his art. And then the fact that he put that in his game, I thought was amazing. And then also he just gave me the art. He just said, here's the PSD of the Runehammer from Relic Blade, do whatever you want with it. And so I took it and kind of made it symmetrical, flipped it upside down, and like made it more like a cutout, like a stamp, rather than a 3D drawing. And I just really think it captured my logo better than my own version of my logo. So it's really kind of the first thing you see when you open second edition.
Yeah, we were sort of half right, Victor, is what we were. We guessed that, see, it's not in the PDF. It's an entire page of its own. So our page 2 in our core 2 PDFs are the little Runehammer logo is on the bottom underneath the all of the credits. And I'm like, I think it's that. We weren't quite sure, but we were kind of right.
This is one thing that I learned from first edition. Well, one of millions of things is that it's erroneous to try to make the PDF into the book. It's a mindset that just creates grinding gears in your brain. And so for second edition, they were two separate projects for quite a while, because they're just completely different mindsets, and I don't know if listeners out there believe that you just sort of make your PDF and then you hit a different button and you export to book, but the book is handmade, page by page. It is not an export from a PDF in any way. It's a totally different art form. And if you actually compare the two, if you're that interested in the details, you'll see actually there is slightly edited text in the hard copy to get columns to fit, because I hate like having sentences go across column breaks. I never want like paragraphs to go across page breaks. And this kind of stuff may seem like in minutia, but in the feel of how easy it is to understand concepts while you're reading, that stuff to me is super important, like critically important. So that's where all that work goes into the second edition book.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff in the actual hardcover that we're not gonna see all. Obviously, we're not gonna see it in the PDF, but one of the things that's not in the list, I believe, is that you put the chapter little red deals in the side, which I think is super cool. Like, when you look at the side of the book.
I saw a picture of that on Google Plus. Was it today? I think it was. That looks
the edge
snazzy.
That is very, very happy with that. And the only reason I got a chance to do that was because I botched, I had a bleed error on my third round of print proofs. So I'm $400 into print proofs, and I'm like, oh crap, there's a little bleed error on the edging of the pages. And I was like, well, I have to go back to press all over again. So I'm going to squeeze a couple more goodies in here. So it was also during that sort of failed proofing process that I got the extra character sheets from the community into the book. So Axe Bane's character sheet is in there, and Frank T's half sheet is in there, and then my Ghost Mountain sheet is in there. And then I also learned on the earlier prints that like they were a hair too close to the gutter. And so when you laid it flat on the copier, you got a little bit of distortion. And so I changed that so that they're out toward the edge of the page, and you get a nice flat press on your scan or your copier to make old school character sheets. And I know this stuff sounds insanely small, but to me, this is the difference between, something that felt a little bit beta and something that really feels like I can stand behind it now for years to come.
Yeah, well, that's a difference between commercial art and a true artist, in my opinion, because you handcrafted everything for the physical book to be what in your imagination needs to be the, Core 2.0. You knew what you wanted and you knew how you wanted it. Well, only you could design it that way. That's why people have jobs that's all they do. They work in InDesign and design physical books, and they print 60 of them before they get it right. And sometimes it's costly, and that's the only way you get it the way you want it. But I can't wait to see.
It would be really hard for a third party to have the mental spaghetti of where the game began, who played what and said what when about what, and how it changed and how it grew and what's important and what isn't, and all of this unwritten sort of lifespan of the game that has taken place so far. Really, I don't even know how I would communicate it to another person. It's so convoluted. And Alex Alvarez, bless his heart, is the closest one to know, but he took a much more technical approach. He just looked at what was there and helped me improve it and fix it. But it was always sort of, I had the gavel on what was important and what concepts could come and go. And, if something wasn't working, I can just say, pfft.
Yeah, I see pictures of Alex Alvarez in my head under his desk, sitting there shaking and rocking back and forth, going, damn, kill them. Just tearing his hair out.
Over like a Google Doc and stuff. And there are so many hundreds of things we wanted to do. And we were talking through each rewrite. We just had to do the entire thing on Hangouts. So we did it all live with each other. And we did, I don't know, maybe 4 rounds of that on the entire book. It was just like Herculean. And a lot of it is a credit to he has a particular set of skills.
Bless you,
Ladies and
Alex.
gentlemen, you can send the money to Alex Alvarez OCD medicine.
Exactly.
Well, we've decided that the next show is going to be Alex on here, and he's just going to be trash talking you. This guy, he's so hard to work with. He's such a
crazy.
diva.
Stay away. He lures children in with candy.
The improved table of contents with better spacing, names and repairs, and the revised introduction shorter and sweeter. Yeah. What's going on with these ones?
Well, I mean, just to get the book started, it had lumps and weird spots all through the TOC. Some of the TOC didn't match the book. And then the introduction, I don't know if anybody really has noticed, but it's really talks very specifically about the game changing and evolving and being new and like going into the community and stuff. And that no longer sounded right at all. So kind of just had to rewrite a lot of that and simplify it and clean it up. But just to start the book off on the right foot of saying, hey, there are no rules in this game. It's all yours. You don't play every game you want, and hopefully this book will make whatever game you're playing better, that kind of stuff. So yeah, we just started at the beginning, I guess you could say.
The table of contents. You shifted quite a few things around in this book. You've brought spells out of 142, moved them up into the character section. You've added a bunch of adventures and stuff like that. So you pretty much had to just basically rewrite the entire table of contents.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we rearranged a ton of the book, and a lot of it was based on user feedback, obviously on reader feedback, but a huge one was the flow of character creation and like what you want to see on the next page.
Yes.
It had a few real glitches in it that were no fun. So that was a big rearrangement. And then, we have all these huge sections that weren't in the first book, like adventures. And then everybody wanted the tables at the end. And basically, this is another area where Alex was invaluable because he collated all of the feedback on Google Plus for the last year. He just collated everything, and we boiled it down to every question that everyone had or stumbling block or piece of confusion, and we just slogged through it one by one and worked it out and found a way to get the book to flow, so that when you're making your dwarf guardian or whatever, and you reach that point of like wondering what weapons you get, you kind of turn the page and there they are, and you get that kind of feeling of not looking, of not searching. And that was another fun part of what we did. We had no rules, so we weren't going to say you can't do this or you can't do that. If the readers were saying they were stumbling somewhere, we had to find a way. We couldn't just shake our heads. So yeah, there's a huge rearrangement on the entire book.
The weapons, the idea of weapons in this game, and the fact that they all do D6 is I gotta say almost one of my favorite parts, because anytime I go into character creation, when it comes down to the weapons in 5th edition, you find people scanning that list, man. They're looking for the biggest dice, the best.
Oh,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like the Munchkin
for
comes
me,
out.
that was an epiphany moment. If that was one of those, why the hell has nobody ever thought of this before? Because that takes your Munchkins, your min-maxers, your tweakers, whatever you want to call them, and it totally like just puts them in a standstill. They don't know what to do. They're like, well, how do I get a D12 in damage? You don't. Well, how do I get more damage? You don't. Well, what's a stronger weapon? They're all the same. It doesn't matter. And then you should see the look in their eyes when you tell them that. What do you mean it doesn't matter? It's almost like it doesn't register with them. Like, they're sitting there, deer in the headlights look.
Like gadgeting is a big part for your table, which I know it is for a lot of people. We've been experimenting with that in our play group. And so what we've been doing is making like 10-point builds, and you get like 2 epic loot and 3 milestone path loot at creation. And when you get that moment, and then you look at that stuff in Worlds and in 2E, you have a huge opportunity to gadget your character. Like you can create all these goofy, super powered combos.
Sure.
Because I'm just, like this is kind of another one of Alex's ideas. Is he said, let's make badasses. So they get 10 points, you get 2 epic loot, you get 3 milestones, and just gadget them up and come up with wacky combos. And there is a lot of like deep character making to be done. So
sure, you just have to look at it a little differently, right? You have to look at it more like through loot. I think that was the hardest thing for me. I mean, I've learned through one of the big reasons why I do so many conversions of all that different stuff into your system is I need to learn all those nuances before I start writing my own stuff. Because I don't want to just throw stuff on the wall and watch it fall off and land on the ground. I don't have time for that. I want to write something where when I throw it up there, it's going to stick. But that's how I learn new systems. I start getting all the ideas and all the juices and creative stuff that gets flowing from reading other people's ideas, your ideas. And then I start, picking those apart and saying, okay, if we did this, like when you said about Viking Death Squad, and you were like, well, just give them 10 points. And you threw that out there like it was nothing. I'm like, what do you mean give them 10 points? Holy crap, to start with. And then I started to see like what you were doing, how you were stacking the cards. And no matter how powerful they were, it didn't matter anymore. It's all that you don't break the fourth wall kind of thing. And when you went right through it, literally diving like a madman, breaking it, it was an epiphany moment. It just made so much more sense from a GM standpoint. Like, why are you worried about that? Just the 16 hit point dragon from Dungeon World. That whole concept and that whole blog, that just, my mind just exploded when I saw that going, this is how I've always.
Similar concept, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. My head just almost literally just popped right off my shoulders because I was like, I've been playing dragons like this the whole time, but I've been giving them 1,600 hit points. I've been doing it all wrong in terms of mechanics and concepts and stuff, but it was all the same. And I think that some of that stuff is just absolutely wonderful. It's wonderful to see in Core 2.0, and I just honestly can't wait to play more of it.
Yeah.
Character creation can be a bit like fishing. When you introduce them to the idea, like, character creation, I'm like, okay, just tell me what 3 weapons you want your guy to have. And they kind of stop for a second. And this is the point at which the fish kind of, you don't know if it got off the hook yet. And you kind of got to reel a little bit. You're like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Limp for just a second.
Just tell me what 3 weapons you think he would be wielding, and then when it's all said and done, I'm like, loot takes care of all of the problems that are reeling through your head right now, and then you can just see, it's like you kind of got to reel in that fish. But yeah, that's, I don't know. Anyways, sometimes I go off on my tangent. That was one of my dumb tangents, but it was cool. I got a fishing deal in there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a small break while Gary takes his foot out of his mouth.
He's going to do some fishing.
Yeah, the new Breako boxes are pretty straightforward. They don't really need much of a rant or whatever on them, but we
just got them to pop.
Yeah, and they do. Wow, they stick out, and those are my favorite. I was telling Victor on the last when we were doing this, I'm like, the cool part about him. Do you know Sergio Aragoni? The guy. He's the guy that did Gru. Yeah, he did Gru, and he does the little tabs in the Mad magazine, and I'm like, that's what those things are like. It's you're reading it, and then there's this like little epiphany. There's like this. It's kind of like you punching somebody in the head, saying, "Hey, pay attention to this point," and there it is. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like there's a bunch of rambling, and then here it is solidified in this little bit right here.
In 2 sentences, yeah. There's a whole page worth of content, but we're going to show you how to do it in 2 sentences. Here it is. This next one right here, it says keywording repairs on meter beat basics or other key play terms. Oh boy, man, yeah. What a storm that was when we started talking about that on Google Plus. Are you kidding me? There's a whole 3 weeks worth of content.
Yeah.
People were arguing that.
13, I have to roll a 14. Yeah.
It seemed so simple, right? That most people would make the assumption it's a meter beat kind of basics roll, but you literally had to spell it out for them on there.
Yeah, it's just another great example of don't dislike the cold reader, love him.
Right.
Embrace him, and if we need to say meter beat, then fine, no problem. Let's run down all those little rats because they're hiding in all these little spots in the book.
Yeah, that's what drives you nuts as a writer, though.
Oh yeah. I mean, once we got it all done, then we're like, this sounds fine. This isn't weird. This is great. This is an improvement.
Sure.
Yeah, I almost feel bad because in a couple we're going to get to something where I'm going to have to come back to number 10. The funny part is like when you're writing, and something that I would probably do quite frequently is I know what I mean. Do you know what I mean?
But you might all the time. Everybody does that.
I think one of the best things that you could pull out of ICRPG, even if you never actually sit down and play the game, you should buy this material just for the nuggets of goodness that are in it, because there's so many. But one of them is just the freedom that you impart upon people. Meter beat really shouldn't have to be in the book. I understand that it does, because most people need sort of that rigidity of the rules, but really just play the game you want to frickin' play the game. As long as you're consistent, where it's always beat or always meter beat, your players will come right along with you all the time.
It's the same game. Yeah, it'll be the same game. Yeah.
Greatly improved layouts on stats and effort for clearer understanding. This was something, too, that me and Victor were looking at.
Yeah, so this was a clutch sort of cognitive moment for a lot of people that were the early readers of first edition, is that they would reach this one page, and it was the stats and effort page, and then they were excited, but they had so many questions about the nuances and this, that, and the other thing. And so we just basically rearranged it, rewrote it, and just tried to be extremely loose and happy about effort, because, a lot of people in the beginning were like, oh crap, so I have to roll 10 effort every time I want to open a door and stuff. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. So we had to loosen that up, and then also just be as clear as possible about why this is fun and how this is going to play out in the game. All the concepts. It's just we just did it again. We took everything we had learned and just did that little pinch again, because it's one of the biggest twists in the game, is getting used to what effort truly is and the fun that it can impart rather than the limitations.
Sure.
Because I think in the first writing, people were seeing it as something that was going to slow them down, and it really is something that speeds you up. So,
Hankerin, do you ever feel like as a designer you're always undoing the habits that Dungeons and Dragons has taught everybody over the last 20, 30 years?
No. I mean, I think 80% of what I created owes itself to second edition D&D.
Sure.
So that fundamental pillar is there. I think a lot of the habits, as you call them, are in some way what we do when we get together with nachos and have fun at the table. We're still doing those same ones. I think that just times have changed. and I like to think of ICRPG as a very modern RPG. So it isn't so much like, hey, let's kind of break some of our overly detailed habits. To me, it was just more like, man, we've been playing D&D for so long. Maybe we can round the corners off, so that it just doesn't quite, pick at us quite so much. And then especially, you guys probably felt this, you play a lot of ICRPG and then you go back to 5e and you feel kind of like you got thrown in the dungeon, or like you got thrown in the basement or something. Like it's a very confining feeling all of a sudden, even though you can still adapt the game any way you want. You're still the dungeon master. You get this feeling like you might mess it up.
Funny that you say that, because I'd been playing in a D&D 5th edition and, well, just D&D in general for a while with my kids. That's the first game they knew. That's the first game they grew up playing. And with my brother and and my nephews, and, there's a table of like six of us sitting around the table playing, which is a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. So, of course, I did the most wonderful thing in the world, and I introduced them into ICRPG by converting our current campaign of fantasy into an ICRPG version of it. Yeah. And then we went back to play the D&D version of it, just to, shits and giggles kind of thing. And one of my kids expressed it nicely. He was like, "Dad, that was like, when you ride the horse and you're riding across across the road or whatever, and it's a lot of fun and it's going real fast. Well, that was playing ICRPG. And now when we go back to D&D, the horse is riding me." That's what it's like. You're carrying this big old 400-pound weight, because you've got so much stuff. Like we had little books and some card cutouts, and that was ICRPG. Yeah. And let's go back to D&D. Hold on. And we get the backpacks out, and, doing all
get my spell description.
Yeah, exactly.
Which isn't wrong. Like, let's be really clear here that there's nothing wrong with it. If you have the appetite for all that goodness, then by golly, then that's where you should be and enjoy it and love it. But yeah, I just think I'm happy with what I've put into the community, because this is an expression of how I like to play. So if it's kind of like I said in my new trap video, I was just like, if you don't like fast gameplay and like sort of slightly simplified, you're gonna hate everything I do.
Complete rebuild of the equipment section to include starters, weapons, tags, all into one tight section. Oh, hey, before we get into this, the greatly improved the layout on the stats and effort. I was looking at that. So I was back here at like how to play, but I think the stats and effort part that you're talking about is actually like in the build the character section, stats, armor, and effort. That's the part that you redid?
Yeah.
Page 24.
Like where it shows the dice down the right side of the page.
Yeah, gotcha.
That one.
Yeah, see? It's just why, like, when me and Victor were reading this stuff, we were, like, just sort of guessing on the previous parts, which is why it's nice to have you here, because now that you've explained it, I totally, like, I'm looking at the page, I'm like, this is it here.
Well, Gary, right now, he's the only one who has the book, so we're still waiting on ours.
No, actually, somebody got their book today.
I think 3 people have gotten theirs, so they're starting to arrive.
What was that guy's name? Jason Schreider, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
he
Jason Ryder, I think.
Drive-through RPG or the Twin House or something.
I spit in his general direction. I know my stuff is in the mail, so. So the weapon tags and stuff like that's all been rewritten. These are nice too, because you've got ancient on one side, high tech on the other, which is pretty sweet. Weapon tags are kind of where you go to if you want to be a bit of an ICRPG nerd and be that munchkin, because you start looking at things like volatile.
I resemble that remark, damn it.
Yeah, like
I
volatile.
am a munchkin.
I'm looking at, because that's cool. Volatile, man, it explodes like when you roll poorly, which is pretty neat. But I really
tags are something that are completely optional, and in our game, the players run the tags. We do not put that on a DM to try to remember all that stuff. So a player would have a little thing on his particle gun or whatever, and if he doesn't want to play that, then he doesn't have to. And I think tags are they were a little bit of a nod to extra detail, because people do get into their weapons. And also Jason Scranton, when he was playing this gun happy reptoid guy named Guzrak, he had all these kind of weapon shenanigans. He had guns with all these different properties and everything, and he's always slinging them and changing them. And that was his character, and that's kind of how it started evolving. And so we wanted to sort of improve how and when it's portrayed when you're making a character, so that if it's interesting for you, you can just maybe write down one of them, like just as something interesting, like my battle axe is so big I can't ever sort of sheath it or hide it. Who cares? But if that's something that's interesting to your character, like when you go into a bar, you like set it down next to your character, and everybody kind of goes, "Oh."
It's so big you order it a drink.
Using. Yeah. Yeah. Or you joke around how he can't fit down a corridor because the blades on this battle axe are so big and stuff like, that isn't something that's like earth-shaking for the system, but I think for a player they could get warm around that, so to speak, as a little detail.
Yeah, and if if you're a DM or you're a GM, whatever you want to call yourself, things like that can add a bit of flavor into your game. Because if you were let's say you were trying to stealth or hide somewhere, and this guy's got a battle axe so big, like I said, you would order it a beer when you put it down next to you in the bar. Maybe he's hiding in the bush, and he's got to roll hard because that thing's sticking up. Maybe a glint of light going off of
flag.
It, right?
Yeah, like a flag up above.
It's like a silver martini platter.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Something I would like you to go over and explain to me one more time. Guardian class starter now adds con to armor. We had a conversation about this. You either want the tank to feel like a sponge or not feel like a sponge. I can't remember what you said, but this adds a flavor to the Guardian that I forgot what you were asking or you were saying from the last time. So what was the deal with that?
A lot of the classes we tweaked to get their class role to be more extreme. And so with this guy, just what your con bonus is, you also get that for free as an add-on to your armor. So it has two effects. One is like it's really poking at you to be like, you should totally get a high con if you want to be a guardian. Yeah. Like you get double duty on this stat. Like do it. Because remember about 6 months ago, we also rewrote the con rules and the recovery rules based on player feedback. And that made con way more important. And especially since Don't Die on Me now requires a roll, like con is like things, it just really got important. So then the Guardian is the only class that gets double duty out of that con stat. So I like to think of the tank not so much as a hit point absorber, but as someone who can sort of keep coming back for more. And
somebody who's resilient, right?
Yeah, those aren't vastly different concepts, but in my mind, they are a little bit different because I find it weird when a tank is taking 70 damage and he's kind of like good to go. I feel like some of the thrill of him dying is gone. I prefer the scenario where the tank keeps dropping and then he has the guts to get back up. That to me is a more interesting tank design. And that's where the sort of the con-centric recovery tank really comes into play. And then like with our epic characters, we have a spell that Jason is using called Moss of Ages, which is like a small scale regeneration. So he puts that on our tank. So the tank just keeps dropping and then he regenerates like 2 hit points or 1 hit point. And it's enough to just pop him up again. So he's extremely hard to keep down until I like dampen magic fields and other stuff like that. But that was kind of the idea. And so that little reflection inside Guardian, and we don't have to talk through every class, but we did that in all the classes. So like the tank in Warp Shell now has 5 damage resist rather than 3, which is like insane. And then also
the next one is that Archer class. That's the one that we sat and talked about a little bit.
Speed Quiver is now modified 15 or better to trigger it again. So you're going to get double and triple shots quite frequently. And yes, the final answer to everyone asking, you can, in theory, infinitely fire.
As long as you can roll high, keep shooting.
As long as you can modify it. So you could make a Munchkin-y character who's +6 dex, and every time you shoot, you have a pretty good chance of getting a mod 15. But I think everyone will find that the dice are cruel enough to balance this mechanic perfectly fine.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Especially at the least likely moment, the dice will lie to you.
And,
you have arrows, and so like a gadgety build that also that Jason came up with a different character is he got the green bow. So the green bow is the one that grows little twig arrows out of it. So when you combine the twig arrows, which are infinite supply, with the speed quiver, you get a pretty nice little gadget build right there.
Yeah, Hank, have you ever played Savage Worlds? Do you know the rules at all? Savage Worlds?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, and I read the book, but I've never just like sat down and really ground it out.
It's fantastic. Savage Worlds, like when I compare the two systems, I've said this numerous times. Savage Worlds is like the PS4 and ICRPG is like the Game Boy. Like if you want to take a rules light system on the road and go have some fun with it while you're out and about that doesn't require a lot of stuff, and that's ICRPG. It's full flavor, like a Game Boy is, but you can carry it in your back pocket. Savage Worlds has a cool mechanic called acing die. You roll the maximum, and you just re-roll it and re-roll it and re-roll it. Archer class, when you get the modified 13, that's like acing, dude, and it's so sweet because you can just see your players light up. Oh shit! I gotta go again. I gotta go again. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That adds.
And same with the exploding dice on the mage, and we come up with a lot of these little things that were there before, but we just have emphasized them quite a bit.
Yeah, I just think that's cool. If you're an archer and you just get to sit there and roll that dice over and over because you're on a hot streak, you know that guy, he's laughing his fool head off, having the best time ever, and everybody else at the table is just sitting there looking at him like, what's going on right now? Are you going to stop
firing long enough for us to play? That's
just save some.
Thinking.
Well, and we've seen it happen too, where the poor guy will like miss for the whole night.
Oh yeah,
and then he finally hits, and he hits like 5 times,
making up for lost arrows. In other words,
you know how it goes.
Oh yes, I've been there, done that. I don't know how many times I fired off that damn plasma cannon, and I'm sitting there shooting it for 3 rounds, and it's doing nothing, just holding me back. I turn around, and I just cut down half the group right there. The commander class, a +5 is a huge bonus in ICRPG.
It is
why so big? I mean, is the Amulet of Kings that important?
It's such an underused character trait.
Charisma.
It is vastly underused, but when it is used to effect, it can be sometimes a real highlight moment because it can change the tone of things, not necessarily the nuts and bolts, but the tone. And so I think it's a really underappreciated, honestly, sort of ability. So we wanted to just let someone know, hey, if you're going to sacrifice one of the biggest choices of your entire creation, which is class, to be this kind of hell yeah guy, then we want you to really go hell yeah when you say that. So that's why we bumped it up. And it's like, it is a little extreme, but I think it kind of says like, if you're going to be a commander, almost every time you try this, you've got a really good chance of succeeding.
As soon as I saw that you had changed it to +5, I started flipping through all the other loot and all the other stuff for starter rewards. I'm like, no one gets that high of a bonus. What the heck makes the commander so special? And then I thought to myself, man, he turned that into loot. What happens if he loses that thing? That's a whole nother adventure in and of itself.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'd be like on this week playing in my new dungeon, Eyes of Odium, when poor Alex's fighter character lost 3 of his milestone path loops.
Oh yeah, he was talking about that.
The corroders were just picking him apart, and he was like tanking 5 of these corroders to try to get everyone out of this room, and they're eating up his irreplaceable loot.
That's awesome.
Good stuff.
Quickly, because I don't want to dwell on this too much, what's the premise behind the commander? See, for me, the commander would be that grizzled war veteran that shows up, that can tell you to inspire you to charge into battle and give you bonuses that way, inspire you to not run away in fear and give you bonuses that way, which is what they get from Wisdom Power Titan's Battle Cry, but that just gives them a bonus to everything. But that's how I sort of view it, but it doesn't seem like that's the flavor that you were going for. So I was just curious, for my own personal reason, what's the commander idea of the commander in your mind?
I mean, for me, I wanted to be that emergent charisma player. So they really, even at the time of creation, aren't sure what they're going to do with their badass charisma. They just know they have it. And I think this is often one of your most odd and unexpected characters, is the one who never wants to lose an argument with an NPC, or like the one that when they lay down an order and they really want to sway the way things are going, they really mean it. And they don't really know where it's going to go. But even the term commander for me was really hard to land on, because I didn't want to imply that they just give orders with this charisma. I think it could take a lot of forms. These are the kinds of people that others should, in the story, should just be drawn to them. They should just want to do what they want to do. They should see the good or the power in what they're wanting. And I think that could take a lot of forms. Like, I actually thought about Guts. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the Guts movies. It's anime. But I would think of him in some ways as a commander. He has this kind of presence. And like when he walks into a battle, kind of like Achilles. Like when he walks into a battle, everybody just parts. They get out of the way because they know you don't just go attack this guy. This guy is like an archon, like bring out the champion. Achilles is here.
they want to watch the show. They want to see what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's
Or
almost
he's
like
kind of,
yeah.
like Odin, where he puts down Gungnir, and Gungnir lets out this ringing noise, and like everyone shuts up and listens because the oath spear is about to, oaths are about to be taken. And I think it could take a lot of forms. It's just a way for a creative player to kind of run a little bit wild.
I would love to see you talk about that more on your YouTube channel. Talk about the classes in Alfheim and Warp Shell, and just kind of deep dive into a mage or deep dive into a Ghost Mountain Gambler, or
listen to him.
One of the mechs on Warp Shell. That would be awesome to hear you talk about what your idea of what that character was, and then the variations on the theme of that. Because I know as a player, I don't get to play a lot. I GM a lot. So for me, half the time I'm trying to explain these things out to the players, to try to get them not to just be a mage. What kind of mage? Do you want to be a specialist? You know what I mean? Have more of a conversation about that, and talk about those in small blurps, and love what you're doing with Patreon. If you guys haven't already been a part of Hankerin's Patreon, make sure you guys get on that. There's a lot of secret little tidbits that he gives away to that RPG mainframe. That is a genius title. Absolutely love that. Want to see. I want you to do that for the rest of your life, man, because that is just there's some good nuggets of solid gold sitting up in there. I think you could do that on every single.
I really like
class
doing
that you've written.
mainframe.
Yeah, mainframe is
really
awesome.
fun.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's one of my favorites from your Patreon. You keep doing that one, I'll be a fan for life right there.
Hey, Victor.
Yeah.
How about you stop giving away ideas for our show?
Hey, somebody's got to do the work around here. We can't all look pretty like you, Gary.
Oh, jeez. Pretty is not how I would describe myself in any fashion. You see me coming across the street.
Only. Audio only.
And this is why we have a podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Bioforms page reformatted for read and art fun. I didn't really see that much of a difference when I compared the two, 135. Now, was this from a previous? Because some of these things that squeak into your 2.0 section are actually from pre 1.35, which was the one I was comparing it to. So the Bioforms comes in from before that page got changed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now.
And they're also they kind of just took their own shape in the book, and it's just, they aren't necessarily in a linear fashion like that it's just, they kind of just formed in their own ways.
Gotcha. Here's where we're going to shoot back to number 10. Key wording repairs on meet or beat basics and other key play terms. We got to number 16. Tank class starter now ignores 4 damage rather than 3. So this is, when I read it, it says ignore any damage of 4 or less. Me and Victor
so my
have
notes on Google Plus are probably the less accurate ones, because I just wrote them all from memory.
So how does that work? Because me and Victor had a little bit of a go around with this one.
Here we go. Yeah, force shield module. Ignore any damage of 4 or less. So if you're hit for 4, then you are hit for none.
You're good.
If you're hit for 5, you took 1. Yeah.
Okay, so Victor was right. Screw you, Victor. I hate you. I'm leaving. I'm out. That's kind of what we sort of came to the consensus of, if you take 5, then you get hit for 5, then you just take 1 hit point, which is super cool. And that is one of the most spectacular features that I've come across. When I played my dumbass Gartar setting, Tony Fanning took that frickin' shield, and at the end, when we were in this room with all of these long tendrils that were reaching out and trying to squeeze him and smack him and squish him and stuff, I was rolling such crap damage, 1, 2, 3 points of damage, and he just ignored it all. And I'm like, this is why your tank is frickin' awesome. This makes you spectacular, dude. Oh, that's super cool. Okay, all right. Well, never mind that. Outsider class. Matter distension is no longer a hard roll.
Oh, yeah. I think that scared everyone away. So being stretchy. So
yeah.
being stretchy because there's something wrong with your matter composition. It shouldn't be a hard roll. It's like it's too intimidating and you never want to make it. It's just hard is too hard.
I was thinking of that that blob class in Star Frontiers when you wrote that character.
Oh yeah, the guy from Mighty Herculoids is think where that
and
from.
He can stretch and get real thin and roll as a ball, and we had a blast with that as kids. I mean, I was like a teenager when Star Frontiers came out. I'm like, what? I can be like Mr. Fantastic and reach under the door and turn the door. I was just waiting to put my hand into the lock so I could pick them by
every group in Star Frontiers had a guy with goggles, a pterodactyl man,
Yeah.
and a blob man, and a blob
Yep.
man.
Yep. And of course, there had to be one human. There had to be the token human in the group.
Yep. So good.
Yeah.
The spells list has been pulled from 142 and dropped up in 45,
Before
46.
we go any further with that,
Yep.
thank you, Hankerin, for making those things alphabetical. That was driving me psycho. I even went into my own PDF and pulled it, edited it, and resorted it and put it back.
To make you go crazy.
Oh my God. Because trying to find a spell when it's not in alphabetical order, it's not a numbered chart. Oh, my OCD was just, I was sitting here twitching.
So bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
It's so much easier to go through. It's so much easier to go through.
I think I know how I'm going to mess with you now. I'm going to send you everything in an unalphabetized order.
Oh, hell no.
Show notes will no longer be.
It's different when you're looking at a reference chart, a whole page of spells, and then you send me, you put like Hammerfall in the beginning and Mind Trap at the end and Worlds Beyond Time is number 2. It's like, well, how do you figure out what is what? They weren't even numbered, so you can't even like look at the numbers or anything. You had to go and search for them all over the place. It was just driving me batty. I was copying and pasting that into Excel and sorting it and putting it back, so it was driving me nuts.
So other than to pull it from the back of the book and drop it into the character section, was there anything that you've changed distinctively inside the spells that stands out that you might remember?
I mean, we just went over each one and made sure we didn't have weird explanations or weird things that seemed anemic, like some abilities seemed either poorly worded or they just weren't punchy enough. So we just went through all that. And I think 2 or 3 spells just went the way of the dodo. And we added, I think, 1 or 2 just to fill in a hole or would rename it and then move it because it's shared with another, So you'll just see this sort of nice smoothing of that whole set. And then putting it into the creation section, obviously, is a huge move that I think all the readers wanted. So it's like, I'm going through, I got this, I got my weapons. Okay, that's kind of cool. Here, I got my spells. Okay, I'm feeling pretty done. And that getting that flow of pages to feel natural where you're not like flipping back and forth. Like, okay, let me pick my spells now. Da, 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 da. Oh, there they are. Okay, I'll go back to my guy now. Da, 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 da. Which you have to do in the 5e book too, and it drives me bats.
Yeah. No. Was there a lot of that done to second edition? A lot of rearranging those pieces? Because I know that spells was pulled up to the front. Was there anything else, maybe say not like in the character creation section, but maybe you were like, oh, well, this piece probably should go over here somewhere?
I mean, mainly the weapon stuff, the spells. Actually, no, now that you mention it, really creation is the one where we did the most juggling because of all that feedback of people coming in and making their first character and being awesome and posting on the forum right at that moment, which is like such a valuable moment for a new reader, is that first time because they're discovering all this data that we're desperate to get because we've made 1 million characters. So I think that is that. Kind of like you described it, like fishing, this is the moment where if they have fun making that character, you got them. Mm-hmm. And then they'll figure out all the rest of the game. But if they are stilted and they stumble in that first, which unfortunately kind of happens to me on Pathfinder, I stumble on making a character like just for fun. And I wind up just never getting to all the other wonders that await.
Yeah.
Because like my fighter, I'm scratching my head over my fighter.
Yeah.
So we wanted that to be the welcoming experience that felt the most natural, and so I think it's why it got the most juggling.
In 5th edition, I've made so many frickin' characters in 5th edition. But even in those 5e books, when you start like reading them, the character creation stuff in that book is kind of pretty well defined. Like you get this, take this starter kit, and I know the spells are way at the back of the book, but that's pretty much only because half the frickin' book is just the same spell reworded in a different way. But they did a good job on 5e, and I'm getting somewhere here. So when you're doing 5e, it's still pretty good. You could sit down at 5e and if you actually took just a bit of effort, you could work your way through building a character without any problems and figure it out on your own. Pathfinder, I couldn't do it. I would have to go ask for help.
You need a book of instructions to learn how to read the book of instructions.
Yeah. I would literally have to ask for help with somebody that knew how to make characters in that book. I never really got into that one. So anyways.
I think too that just times are changing. And so I've noticed it is harder to get people to sit down and like volunteer to make 5e characters. Yeah. It's different from even 5 years ago as far as people's interest in, oh, okay, well, I got my pencil and, let's kind of figure it out. I think the proliferation of board games is also contributing to that. People are getting used to the board game experience. And so making a character is a little like, well, don't I already have a character? Like, why do I have to make a character? I don't want to do that.
They'd rather pick up a pre-gen that you already have ready to go and save them the trouble. They'll figure it out.
I feel that trend is kind of getting some grip. Yeah, I think it's expected in some ways.
I feel at my old age, so to speak, is that's where I'm at. I'm in the era of one shots and pre-gens because I really just don't have time to sit down and do anything more than that at this particular stage. I've got kids and the whole 9 yards, right? So I'm trying to get them involved as much as possible, which is why I freaking love your bloody system. Like my kids, I could just, we're in and we're going in no time. Behemoth Trial. What did you change in this? There's got to be something.
Oh, right. Yeah. So that thing was all but unbeatable, if you guys remember. Like, and I wanted it to be that way. It was like extremely deadly. And it was basically to show you how hard and dangerous things could be. But we had these high effort limits on like the box to get the weapon out and stuff like that in the old version. And we just brought that all down. So I was just looking at it right now. So we removed rolls that were hard and we just made it a roll to get the case open and stuff like that rather than doing all this effort.
It looks like it still would be hard. I mean, I lost 4 characters to that freaking trial. I still
so this way it's still super hard, but it's over quickly rather than being hard and kind of, chuggy. Yeah. So that's how we did it. But, you get the double ultimate on your cannon and the behemoth has 4 hearts. So really all you need is a couple good damage rolls and you've got him. But before it was this frightening thing of trying to jimmy the case open while you're fleeing.
Yeah, a couple of easy, good damage rolls. Okay, from your mouth to God's ears, I swear that is so hard than you think, because you can roll really well, and the dice are going to be like 1, but it's a magic roll. 1. It's what you get. It's just it happens. It happened. Yeah. Like I think I rolled 1 like 4 times in a row with 4 hits, and I'm sitting there trying to take the thing down, and I'm just swinging away with like a wet noodle because I'm not hurting it at all.
I mean, I think it's also there to illustrate what a monster with 4 hearts is going to feel like, and that sensation to introduce you to. You really don't need much more than that, like ever. Like the 16 hit point dragon type concept. If you're kind of playing it pure and keeping it simple, you'll be shocked how little numeric variety you need. And so
I've told a lot of guys who've come and asked me the same thing that you're explaining, is that you don't need to have a 5-heart dragon to put fear in the hearts of your party or a party in general. I've played games where I've had like a 1-hit goblin, and he's like Yoda with a lightsaber, just running around, driving this party crazy. He's dodging, moving, dexing. He falls to the ground. He looks like he's unconscious. And then he stands back up, and it scares the shit out of them. And they're just like, what the hell is this guy? Like, we can't kill him. And they're like thinking like it's, what's going on? What's happening? And I'm like, it's only 1 hit. You just have to hit him. Yeah, but he doesn't stay down. And that's the whole point, right? You can still create that sense of action, the urgency and the deadliness of a game completely based on how they're reacting to what the monster's doing and the actions that they're taking place for it. He doesn't have to have 4 or 5 hearts for him to be a tough fight. Yeah,
exactly.
You, sir, need to simmer down. That is going to be the second beat.
Sorry, man. Hankerin
in one show.
I just start cussing from left and right. So
wow. I don't know what has happened to you tonight.
Bad influence.
I like to instill fear in the hearts of my players by eating Taco Bell quite soon before I sit down for a session.
That's a whole nother kind of food. Is that what that smell was? I can smell it from here, Gary.
Taco Bell and IBS go like hand in hand like peanut butter and jam, dude. Just saying.
Whoo, man.
Excuse me while oh, never mind.
So we were talking about the next one that you had coming up is edge markers for flip into chapters added. Yeah, that was a great addition. I saw the book. I can't wait to get mine. black on with black on red, or should I say red tabs on a black edge. That looks flipping awesome.
Yeah, I really like that one.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. It's going to make this finding stuff super easy.
Yeah. Now, Gary and I talked about this next one a little bit. We were talking about this because Savage Worlds uses playing cards, but you added using playing cards as dice page. You want to give us a little more on that?
Well, it's I learned about, oh boy, what is that skirmish game? There's this cool skirmish game that's kind of Weird West style that uses cards as dice. And then there's Westbound, that RPG that just came out, uses cards. And
Dracula's America.
What's that?
Dracula's America.
No, it's got one word. I can't remember. Grim something. But anyway, and then in Ghost Mountain, we also were using playing cards to run the gambler class, because that's how he rolls damage and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And so what we wanted to do was just say, screw it. What if you just want to play an entire game without dice and just use your 52 card deck? And so it's just one page. It's just like a little appendixy feeling page, but it just shows how you could do that in ICRPG. So you could play kind of like how Deadlands uses cards as well. You could get some of that feel in your game this way. It's kind of not terribly interesting to the core of ICRPG, but I felt like it was just a fun option to include because of Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to see more of that, Hanker, and I wanted to see more of the playing cards. Well, you and I had a brief conversation about just before you put out the playing card set. I wanted to see more of the gambler kind of playing cards used at the game. I think that and poker chips, just like Deadlands, really draws you into that spaghetti western feel, would really up the ante into getting involved and getting more into that part of the world. But hey, who am I? I'm just dropping ideas here. Take them how you like.
I think that it would be a fun project for a GM to to push this stuff as far into Ghost Mountain as was comfortable for a group.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do so much that it was sounding like some kind of alternative, because in my mind it's still always about the 7 polyhedrals, and that's like the core of everything. So I just kind of wanted to make it a little quick kind of over here,
Yeah. Here's a little idea.
Move on. Yeah.
Yeah, a burning ember that burns through my soul here as I'm going through 101 ideas on how that goes. I had an idea for ICRPG to maybe throw this out there to the community. I've been thinking about this for a while. I've been doing all these conversions and learning all the math and everything else behind it, because it's just the way my brain works. But ICRPG plugins, and it's a one-page. It's kind of like the one-page adventures that they do for Savage Worlds, but it's a one-page plugin, and it creates like a quick plugin rule, like using playing cards for the gambler. You could just do the same thing, and there could be, this is how, a playing cards option, and just a bunch of plugins. And eventually, God forbid, if you make enough plugins, it could be like a 100-page book of all the different options and the different crazy stuff everybody puts together. I was thinking about asking the G Plus community to kind of throw that out there and maybe make a template, and we could just all compile one big book and call it the ICRPG plugins book. I think it would be awesome. I think a lot of people would love to be able to have that variety, because I know everybody talks about, why don't you use the other dice, or why don't we use other monsters, or how do you come you don't use this ability? And even I've done it, taken other rules and other ideas from other game systems and throwing them in there. And it's been a lot of fun, turning that big ball of clay that you rolled out into the audience and turning into something different. It's been really cool. I think it would be fun to do. Yeah,
that was the hope, is that it's built to build and be rebuilt and broken and added onto. So I hope that I know that DIY is not the core of the hobby. I don't think it is. I think the more traditional way of playing is a far bigger audience, but the DIY version of the game is what I know and what I've always done. So it's what I stuck to, but it does limit my audience a little bit to be so DIY feeling. But to me, that's okay, just because it's authentic.
Well, that's where your happy place is, right?
That's where
you come from. Yeah. I've never, out of all the games I've ever played, I've never taken a system and rewrote it to so many other games that I wanted to play, and I've never done it so easily.
Yeah,
you're the same here. That's why I think
amazing.
I finally committed to writing it, is that I found myself having more fun.
You're the guy
definitely. I agree.
You're the guy that I used to beat up at the gaming store for not running modules.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? Conform.
Beating me up with your Taco Bell bag.
That's right. A dozen new monsters added, including swarm rules. Man, I was waiting for this to come out for Swarm. I'm writing an adventure for a 40-man that we're doing. We're doing a 40-man epic at Nerd Haven this weekend, Friday night. Seven DMs, probably seven people per table, and they're all sort of doing their own adventure, working towards one adventure that is called the Orcus Pocus event. So it's all about Orcus, the god of death and stuff. And I wrote in some reed locust swarms before you released to the second edition here, and I gotta say, your freaking swarm is way deadlier than the one I was imagining.
They're
Kill 'em all,
really
Gary.
bad.
Kill them all.
They're really bad.
It's awesome.
I wanted them to be bad. I think a swarm should be a terrifying thing, and like you can't swing your sword at it. You just can't.
I was playing. I was playing my favorite setting, 50 Fathoms, and this one adventure that I wrote was called the Red Channel, and they had to go between this isle through this channel to try and get out to the sort of the bottom side of this long mountain. Otherwise, it would be weeks to go around. Being new to Savage Worlds, I didn't realize that swarms always hit. So all you ever have to do is roll damage. So my players jump off the boat into a pile of swarms, and I'm like, I don't get what's going on here. Why are these friggin' swarms so useless and stuff? Until Eric Lammer was like, no, dummy, they auto hit. All you got to do is roll damage. And then, holy crap, did that ever make my swarms?
Everybody's back in the boat real quick.
Yeah. Then they got deadly. 6 new adventures or added adventures, my bad, section with 6 complete adventures.
Yeah, so the first book, which is crazy to think about, but had no adventures in it. And then for the early adopters, you'll remember that right after I released the book, I released Flight of the Red Sword, but that wasn't in the book. So now every sort of, I don't know, canonical or official adventure that I did over the past year, which is these 6, is now included in the book. So I'm really proud of this because I've always wanted my RPG purchase to include some adventures that I could just chew into right away. And usually like with a player's handbook, you don't get any.
Yeah, no, they charge you extra for.
Are you going to be you going to be the Patreon guy that makes adventures for his patrons? There's only one answer, mister, and that is yes.
No, yeah,
yes,
well,
please. Actually,
I was going to walk everybody through the Odium dungeon that I'm doing right now.
Yes,
but
please.
In this format, I'm not sure because once again, my intent here is for the DMs out there to be making these. And I do think that there can be a sort of point of fatigue, that kind of feels like the DMs Guild, which is like, man, there's like 590 adventures. And I want to be very focused in the ones that
these are good adventures. But these are good adventures.
Well,
did you learn nothing from all of the beatings I gave you with those modules at a young age? Come on. Conform, mister. Here's the thing. Your modules aren't like the modules
play in your worlds.
Yeah, and they're not the modules of old of yesteryear where everything is written out right down to the loot that you're finding. Your modules are little one sheets that are just nuggets. Like in the first book, the Norberg, there was one line that maybe was 7 words, and I created like a 3-hour adventure out of it, and that was taken out the Lich Deceiver. That one sentence spurred. So, anyways, a little something for your Patreon, for me, Patreon me.
I mean, it's funny you should say that because that's how I made Doom Vault as well, which is the first adventure. Well, no, it's the second adventure in the book. It's from that introduction to Norberg in the World Primer. Is I was trying to put myself in a reader's shoes. And so I was looking at the World Primer, and I'm like, what's the first thing I read? Blurp. And I was like, oh, stuff about Ire and Norberg. Oh, I'll just make an adventure about that. So I just did, and that became Doom Vault, which is the only adventure I've ever known with a completely undefeatable enemy. Like where they just simply cannot be harmed in any freaking way.
You need to put a warning label on that adventure.
You have to deal with it.
Yeah, there is a whole bunch of 3D maps that I created inside of Tabletop Simulator that all pertain to that first adventure, defeating the Lich Deceiver, that I will be releasing as soon as my players have finished it. But there's
awesome.
Yeah, a bunch of cool stuff that I'm gonna put out there for some folks that listen to the show.
Great.
Redefining or refined the wording and details for chunks and vehicles. Okay, that's cool. So in speed kills. So that's been touched up a little bit.
Yeah, because the more that we've been playing sci-fi games with battle suits and space fighters and all this other cool, fun stuff over the past few months, the more that we realized how clutch the chunk concept was. And so we wanted to go back and make sure that it was properly conveyed how universal and how useful and exactly how the details work. So we just rewrote it all so that it, we took all that play and just made it sound more accurate.
Back to the your paper minis thing, what I was talking about earlier. I noticed that today you released. I was telling Victor, I'm like, hey, this is probably the first color that I've seen in the book is the different colors of the mech suits and stuff. And today you released those paper cutouts and stuff like that, which just reminds me again to remind you that I want that little rock stand thing for the bottom for my minis.
You'll get your rock stand thing.
I'm going to harass you about this, mister. I'm just saying. Repaired and scaled up Axebane's awesome art.
You better give him his rocks, Hanker, and he's not going to stop talking about it.
Yeah,
good.
Repaired and scaled up Axebane's awesome art in Eyes of Set. What is that? Eyes of Set is the adventure.
I don't know if it really ever reached the reader's eye in a meaningful way, but in my source files, I had a little bit of a sort of some like link breakage because some of his drawings had been moved in my file structure. And so I couldn't update them, so I couldn't like make them bigger and make them, tastier. So I finally figured that all out and fixed it. That was really bothering me. So I fixed it and so all the art that Axebane did is like sort of bigger now and is like has that sort of perfect crispness that I like and everything. So it's very technical, probably maybe something that no one ever noticed was wrong. But now like Brutus in Speed Kills, he's like really big now, and I couldn't make him big before. So I know that it's very detailed, but this is the kind of stuff to me that like really will eat at you, that you really need to fix that someday, and just got around to it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I get so excited when I read this book because there's so many cool things that pop out and stuff. Like even when you say things like, I would have never noticed that. I'm art illiterate. Like I'm seriously art illiterate. But yeah, anyways. Added space combat and dogfight rules in Planet Killer, which is super sweet. The dogfight stuff, when you were explaining it, was top notch. That and throw in chunks, man, I'm going to kick my wife out of bed and sleep with this freaking book. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my God. Wow.
That's a scary picture.
I got to hand it to the Immortals for how they played the Death on Krell module. And them being the players was sort of when those dogfight rules gelled and also were sort of finished and became complete. So having those test players in there was just clutch. So we had to make sure that it was written right in the book, and because it's not really a very conventional way to run it. It's a bit off. But once those players got in there and they were using it in such fun ways, I was sure that it was a good idea. So
nice.
My thanks out to those guys.
So we got a couple more, and I'm just going to pump through these so that we can get to some questions because it's an hour and 10 into this deal. So you've moved all the tables to the back of the book. You've included bizarre loot. Me and Victor were talking about something the other day because there is basic loot and shabby loot, but you've changed one of them to ancient loot, which is the basic loot is now ancient.
Yeah, I think basic was just a baffling title to everybody. They didn't know what the hell that meant. And then even to call it Alfheim, it doesn't make any sense because you can have ancient loot in your sci-fi game. And so what we just tried to get it so it's all clear and it doesn't have like accidental implication.
I remember when I was putting these cards together inside of TTS with Daniel, I'm like, I don't know which one comes first because basic and shabby were kind of similar in the scale of how good they were. Anyways, we just decided on one or the other. Updated the glossary. Okay, here's removed the learning mechanic from all loot. I like that mechanic, man. Except I like it in one fashion, and that's in combat. When you throw that lockbox out and they have to learn their way into it instead of just getting it, or that ring falls off this guy and it's a ring of strength or something like that. And I like that learning mechanic because here's the thing. When you got your thiefy guy in the back of the party and he's like, oh, loot or oh, kill, what's he going to do? It adds that added dilemma. And I like it in that mechanic. In any other time,
I mean, I think it's still easy for a DM to say, you need to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. I'm keeping it.
Because it's a helmet of craziness, right? And you have to figure this out. And he can improvise. You have to make 3 rolls, or you have to do 10 effort with intelligence or whatever. And I think just keeping this mechanic as like vernacular, I guess you could call it, or loose talk, I think is much cooler for the game and easier to run than how we were doing it before, which is this, again, an accidental implication that was like, you have to do this. on all these things, and it's going to slow the game down greatly. And to me, it was just a real clunky implication that you were always going to be doing 10 effort to learn a spell. Like people just want to stab themselves in the eye. Mm-hmm. But if you do get this really epic spell and your DM wants you to put a little bit of work into learning it, okay, great. Improvise how you're going to slow that down. But I didn't feel it was right as a pillar level mechanic.
Yeah, no, I totally know what you're saying. Inside of Mere Moments, it makes sense. Like you find a scroll, it's going to take you some time to read it. So the difficulty of it and applying the learning mechanic to it in Mere Moments makes perfect sense. But when you go to, in hours or days, it doesn't really. It's like it becomes the take 20 rule in D&D where you just automatically. You know what I mean? So, but in Mere Moments, it's fantastic.
Just brushed under the rug really quick.
Yeah, because you come across a door, you're being chased down a hallway by a giant ogre or maybe ooze, and you come to a locked door. And you're in those Mere Moments, man. It's like the thief needs to pick this lock before this black ooze gets here. That is ultimately a super cool mechanic that adds that extra layer of, I'm going to say it like Victor says it, oh shit. And I'm not even going to bleep that one out, Mr.
Yeah, so it raises the oh crap level.
Yeah, non-combat effort is absolutely still right in the spotlight of the game. I think the removal of learning is more about being able to utilize things that you find and being blocked by that learning effort. I think that was too much, but I think non-combat effort in the game is still absolutely critical, like picking up a lock. Absolutely fun, especially helping each other, because that's when it really accelerates and you realize how important helping each other is and stuff like that. But if I finally get another spell and I've played for 2 sessions and I finally find a spell and then I don't get to learn it, I have to freaking poke at it for 3 turns or something. Oh, that's a big bummer. Yeah.
All right. Additional character sheets in the back of the book. Frank T made it in the book. Woot woot. Shout out to Frank T. 10,000 typos.
Awesome. There's several options for which one you can use, and they're included, unlike the first book, which is the big ding that I got. What are you, crazy? There's no character sheet in this book.
When you were talking about character sheets laying flat on the copyright machine or the Xerox, I was just trying to think, man, back in the day, I think ours just ripped out, or I would take the staple out.
Think about that, Gary. When's the last time you opened a book and photocopied a character sheet?
Well, I just remember riding to the library when it was I started playing when I was 8. That would have been 1979. So mid 80s, I was riding my bicycle to the library to use the photocopier.
Yeah, I would do it at Albertsons. It'd be 10 cents a copy.
Yeah, and you're spending all the money that you made because 10 cents is steep back then.
That was pretty good. I made friends with a lot of librarians just so I could use their photocopy machine.
Oh boy, I bet you did.
It's probably been 30 years, and my mom doesn't listen to the podcast, but I stole a shitload of my mama's change to go make character sheets. All right, that wraps up the fixes. Is there anything else that you didn't put in this list that we need to know about? Because
what did you want to put in there that you didn't? What did you throw out? What other ideas do you have rolling around in that crazy brain of yours?
Never mind, you don't have to answer that question, because
on the grounds that you might be incriminated.
Not only that, but
there were other pieces of Warp Shell where it went a little further and went into some more world stuff. There was a couple more adventures that just didn't gel quickly or cleanly enough. And they didn't get cut. They just never got finished. They just didn't snap. Eyes of Set is a player written adventure, and it just had a snap to it. It required a lot of work, in my opinion, to clean up and get ready, sort of quote unquote, for prime time to get into the book. But just reading it, even if it in its roughest form, it had the magic right there. It just popped. And so sometimes if a thing doesn't pop right away, it just won't even make it to the halfway stage. But there isn't a lot left out, because everything here that has gone in is the development process of the last year. So instead of making a bunch of stuff and then trying to pack it into a book, it didn't really do that. The book was as big as it needed to be to hold everything, which I think is the final note maybe to talk about as far as hard copy goes, is that the first one, the hardback, was not very practical because it wasn't thick enough. And so it's a little weird feeling. It's kind of a strange little book, almost like a poetry chapbook. But this one, now at 210 pages, it's like it feels, the proportions of it feel right, like the monolith sort of. The monolith has these golden proportions, and it has that. So it's thick enough now to where having it in hardback makes sense. Like you can set it on a table like this, and the spine will wear in so that it sits flat, and you can flip through it in a way that's easy, whereas the first hardback was a little difficult. And so it's just different. It feels like a finished book that's like got a blocky thickness to it.
And thank you for making it half size.
And I just did not achieve that on the first one. And I think luckily, since everyone has been so supportive, that didn't work against me. And so in time, it also, making a black cover makes it sit on your shelf with other books in a much more friendly way. It doesn't look unfinished. So I don't know. It's a lot of this little stuff, but stuff that, took a lot of thought and work. And so I think that's why I'm just so happy. So now it's just a matter of everyone getting it to the table and getting some worn out copies, and, I'm going to take a bunch of them to every con I go to from now on. I'm going to start stockpiling these things and then get the stockpiles to Amazon. I'm going to try to do a Lulu version, and then the Lulu version will digitally fulfill to all different kind of distributors like Barnes and Nobles and other stuff. And so we're going to really go for it on this edition. Like, I would like this to last, years.
So
5 years, 5 years before we see another one. I'm sure you're itching to write another one.
For core, yeah, it'll probably be a little while. Yeah, there might be other things, like I do want to do the good and evil books.
Yeah.
But for core, yeah, I would like it to settle, because I was really sensitive to this feeling that everyone was having of like, I don't know if I should get this if it's going to be like second edition pretty soon.
Yeah.
Is this so volatile that I'm going to get burned on my purchase? And so that is why one of the biggest decisions of the whole thing was to just give it away to everybody who bought first edition. But then also,
it's like a drug, to get us addicted and make us want to buy every.
Now I just want to hold this dried concrete and keep it right here. So even if there are improvements to make, we'll do those on paper with pen and with pencil. I won't keep doing this. I need to basically just, here it is, and we're going to sit here for a while so that people don't have this feeling of like shifting sand under their feet.
That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. I think a lot of publishers get caught up in the whole sell more, give me more adventures, more accessories, and they don't let the game settle down long enough. And before you know, 3 years later, you have a whole nother edition that you've got to throw out $1,000 worth of books at that you just finished playing an adventure with. So
you just got to throw up a in your resource section, just put up an addendum kind of a thing, which is a modifiable PDF kind of a thing, because there's not going to, if there's not going to be enough changes to it, you could just write in there, this change, because that's what they do with some of the D&D books now, right? Like when it goes into printing, because they've sold all their copies, they put out an edition that's got all the addendums in it and stuff like that. But if All right, let's get over to the next section here, where we're going to have you answer some of the community listener questions. So, section 3, questions. Let's do it. Super fast, super tidy. We got 5 or 6 questions that people are itching to ask. First one, Chris Stenger. Now that World's second editions are out, the Worlds and second edition are out, what's next? As a follow-on, will ICRPG always be a work in progress, or does 2E wrap up your official development of the system for a bit?
Right, so that's kind of what we were just talking about. And I think the answer is next? It kind of wraps up the core development. And I think what we want to do is, I like how Victor described it, is let it settle. Like let's let it gel and let it sink in and let everybody play and mod and hack, and get out of this mindset of let's fix beta, and more get into a mindset of just grooving on it, which is kind of what our weekly group has been doing. We're just more grooving and just playing now and getting a little more into worlds and stuff like that. And then
I want to see a leather bound edition with the worlds included. That's what I want to see.
I bet you do.
All one
Kinky
big
Mr.
fat
Man.
book.
I think we'll come around to that. I think when Good and Evil is done,
then
that will be probably the next fun thing. But I just want everyone to remember that I am in business, and I am a printing press, and so I need to sell books. But I also am extremely concerned about being a sort of sustainable and authentic business with a lot of integrity and respect for my readers. And so I never want to be pinging for cash when it's not to the betterment of the whole game. So if it's to the betterment of the game, then yeah, I'm going to have to hit you for, 25 more bucks. But if it's really not a meaningful, blob of awesome, then I'm just going to keep quiet. So I think even Good and Evil might take me a year to really get around to, because I'm not sure where all this is going yet. We need to all play for quite a while to see like what's going to be needed and what could be interesting. Not just, hey guys, I made another product here. More ICRPG. Just here's a million more tables or something.
That's what I'm excited for. I mean, really, honestly, I see the future of your game really growing. Not in terms of like a bigger business, make more money or anything like that. Not that I don't wish you any success. I mean, the core of the story, the core of Alfheim, of Warp Shell, and all those stories combined, the living Alfheim that we've talked about, all the different little things that are happening, those little glints and shimmers of hope that we see in the Google Plus community, or just in the last few months. I've never seen a community really move and think like that.
It's really chewing it up.
It really is. I mean, I run a whole bunch of other communities in Google Plus, and I got my pulse on a lot of that stuff and how it works and how to move. And I've never seen another community that not only grasps and embraces the designer and the game that in that way, but also like keeps that ball rolling. It seems like we're all moving downhill, and some days it's faster than others, but I've never seen it grow so fast, so intently. I don't know what the word that I'm looking for. Everybody seems to really be focused in the same direction without really knowing where they're going. They're just following you, and they're following.
I think it's
your story.
A little bit similar to how Dungeon World felt in its early days.
Oh, for sure.
People really just devoured the fun of making Dungeon World content, even if they weren't playing that content.
Yeah,
it was just fun to create. Little STEM dungeons and little STEM monsters and this little idea and that little, you might not even ever play it, but it's fun to write in that Dungeon World, like verbal style.
And look at it now. There's like a dozen different people writing a bunch of different stuff based off of the open content Dungeon World.
Yeah, it really, it's my favorite RPG as far as like its business model, its style of putting itself out there, its acceptance of player created content, and I really respect Dungeon World's role in the hobby. I just think it's nothing about it is perfect, and it's not for everybody. But there's something I really respect and like about it, and it helped to open my mind a lot. And I would like to consider myself someday to be a peer of Dungeon World. That's kind of a real like life goal for ICRPG.
Well,
that I have.
If it makes you feel any better, when I get my book, it's going right next to my copy of Dungeon World and Apocalypse World. So it's going to go right there next to them, because I think yours is, if not superior, at least equal to. It's a great piece of stuff right there.
When you're down and lonely, buddy, and you're in your big house and things are looking glum, just know that Victor's got his copy of ICRPG next to his Dungeon World.
Dungeon World.
Right? And you'll be like, thanks, Victor. Thanks, Victor.
And then the moment's gone.
Yeah. Accessories, dude. There's a lot that you can get out of it. Where's the merch shop? I want Hankerin's face on my chest in the form of like KFC. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just everybody knows the Colonel.
I'm gonna have to leave that particular task to you.
I'm not starting your merch store, dude.
You got to make the KFC T-shirt. I'm not down.
Where's the Hank hats? Where's the Hank shirts? Where's the Hank wristbands and the sweatbands? So when I'm working it out at the gym, I can have Hankerin wrapped around my head. Right?
I'm never going to get that out of my head now.
Or maybe you could put out like an audio track of you doing like all of your intros to all of your little videos where you're like, and I could work out to that. You could make like Hankerin's workout tape. No? None of this is working for you? I'm no Alex.
I'm not writing any of it down. If that's
I'm no Alex. I'm no Alex Alvarez. Is that what you're saying?
Let's get Alex on the show. We'll convince him to do it.
On a less ridiculous note, what I would like is the cards. If I don't know if you've ever printed cards through drive-through, but they make fantastic frickin' cards. Yeah. The basic loot, the shabby loot, the ancient. Well, it's now ancient, but the loot decks. That would be cool. 100 cards, and that's still a lot, man. Because what do you get? 50 cards in a deck, right? That would be cool. They all have the same, but you know what I mean? Because that's cool. That's my index card. It's all about laying down the cards and stuff like that. When I play Tabletop Simulator, we have those cards in the game, and there's nothing cool than shuffling the deck and just grabbing the top one, and you just flick it to wherever you want it to go. They roll it over, and it's like, surprise, this is what you found, which I think is kind of cool. So those accessories. Maybe I want some ICRPG red and white dice. Maybe I want an ICRPG hat that I could put on my head and tout around there.
Man,
I have looked into the dice thing. The dice thing is ongoing. That's not easy, but I think that's worth doing. But that's not like some kind of print on demand stuff. Like doing dice is a more old school production path, and that means stockpiling and more traditional kind of brick and mortar mindset of manufacturing. So that's a little difficult as far as investment, but I'm going to do the dice. It's just a matter of figuring it out, but I just have to. It's just, it has to happen. So
I think you
eventually when you hit that jackpot, Hankerin, you need to go into doing some of your ICRPG models into 3D miniatures, into real miniatures.
Well, if
some of that stuff is really cool.
Yeah, that is possible. I don't know if it fits the brand quite right, but we'll see.
Maybe not yet. We'll see how that board game does.
And even the dice, I was probably going to do them black with, well, it depends, but with no colors and the inset numbers so that you can paint them. So it's like old school.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with the wax crayon. Oh, yeah. I still have a couple of those lying around.
Acrylic paint, and then you scrape it off with your thumb and everything.
Yep. You need to make the 6 on the 6-sided die, the Runehammer symbol.
Something like that, yeah. I've gone through a few different iterations and nothing has felt there yet, so it'll just take time. We'll get there.
Question number 2 is ask Hank. Now this is from Jeff Ehrenberg. Ask Hank if he ever plans on using Kickstarter to fund a future project. I would personally kill for a Runehammer box set in the same vein as the old Dark Sun one with all of the cool player handouts and maps. That's a good idea.
Well, I have I don't know, Kickstarter is a bit of a conundrum right now for me. In some ways, I feel that it differentiates my brand not to use Kickstarter. So I'm trying to hold on that as long as I can until there's something that I absolutely need the audience's help to create, rather than to use Kickstarter as a store, which is what I see a lot of companies doing. And I don't think that's the nature of Kickstarter. So I want to be extremely careful with how I would ever do that. That is very sensitive ground just because of the way that I perceive Runehammer. So I hesitate greatly to go on to Kickstarter. I really take a lot of pride in the fact that I am a sustaining business that runs my own storefront, sort of, and that's how I reach my audience, and I'm really proud of that. And so Kickstarter for me is a place where people who are struggling or starting with that process should be. And it saddens me a little bit to see these big companies making bazillion-dollar Kickstarters, because I feel they're taking some of the revenue of that store from people who are actually kickstarting things in a literal sense. So I really hesitate to use Kickstarter. So if something feels right, then I might, but right now I don't plan on using it. So I love the idea of the box set. Yeah. So I appreciate the question. But if I were to do a box set, I would go straight to the customer. I would not lean on Kickstarter. I would absorb those production costs myself, because I can. So if the day comes that I can't, okay, that's different. Then I might get on Kickstarter to actually kickstart something.
I want one now, an Alpine box set.
You throw those cards in there. You put in a couple of the books. You get one of them Hankerin KFC Hankerin shirts into the deal. You got yourself a sweet ass box set.
Make it happen.
That's right. Eric Buchanan, we have answered this question on the last time that we had a little chat with Hank. He wants to know what it's like now to make a living off creating games. Do you have health insurance? Do you work 9 to 5? Can I live vicariously through you? I don't know about the last one. But...
I do have health insurance. I don't work 9 to 5. And yes, you can definitely live vicariously through me if I can do my job well enough. But what's it like? It's extremely difficult. It takes a great deal of creative tenacity. The first 5% of everything is a blast. It's really fun, and it's a lot like doing the hobby as a hobby. The other 95% is hard work, and it can be a lonely path sometimes because you are the boss and the custodian. I mean, you're everybody in the building, so there's no one to blame for anything except yourself, and that can be a little unnerving and difficult. But at the same time, I mean, this is like so many of us. This has been my dream for a very long time, and I've been like learning these skills for many years to try to push them into this effort. So, it's really just a matter of not drinking beer too early in the day is a big part of it, and just continuing to, well, you guys know, and my podcast does reflect this, but continuing to use like this sort of mantra type approach of telling yourself over and over, like what the values of what you're doing are. It isn't just making money by selling stuff to people. It's right. There's a lot more nuance to what I believe the right thing to do is in life. And I think I'm trying to reflect that in my business and in my brand. And I think that can be very challenging. That can be very hard. Like week after week. It can be very hard.
You're never going to get anywhere with that attitude, mister. I'm just saying. Right? It's time
we need the KFC shirts. Did I mention the KFC shirts yet?
Wow. My buddy Harrison Hunt, he's a host of the Tabletop Twats, an English RPG podcast. And he's also co-host with us on The Wild Die, our Savage Worlds podcast. So this is a legit question, and he does some funny things, and he's a bit of a lunatic. So he says, I want to ask, I really want a beer. I guess that's his new name for you. Instead of Hankerin Fernale. I
really want a beer.
Yeah. He says he wants to know if you're pagan, or he says he's pagan, right? And then he wants to know, his question is, what are his favorite pagan black metal bands?
I don't know if I really listen to much black metal. I listen to, as far as metal, I like Neurosis. I like Amon Amarth. I don't really listen to monster metal, though. Like, ooh, I don't listen to that kind of stuff, to be to honest.
It sure comes out in your YouTube channels, though.
Yeah, I mean, I listen more to, I guess, what do you call it? Power metal. That's like Amon Amarth, Pantera. I'm kind of old school with this stuff. I know there's a whole bigger new scene of all this stuff nowadays, but and also I got into some of the new metal stuff like Mono. I thought Mono was really cool. I thought Lesbian was really cool. High on Fire is pretty awesome. They're kind of like black metal.
I like lesbians.
What's that?
I said I like lesbians.
Well, who doesn't? I mean, I suppose some of them are cool and some of them are jerks, just like everybody else.
Right.
But as far as the pagan thing, yeah, I think I would have to probably self-classify as somewhat pagan. Like when I'm alone in the dark, I kind of talk to Odin and Thor. Preferably not Thor. He's kind of annoying.
What is a pagan?
Difficult to communicate with.
What's a pagan?
Pagan is a person who believes in multiple gods.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, I do watch a lot of like the old school fantasy stuff with the what's the Vampire Hunter from way back in the day. They always talk about pagans and stuff like that. Religion, as you can tell, is not my strong suit. I gotta read this one because if I don't, I'm just gonna feel like I did Daniel a misservice. Daniel McLaughlin is he's my TTS, my tabletop simulator bro. Most of the stuff that you see is me and him collaborating on, oh, we need this for our game, we need this for our table and stuff. So he says, Hank, and I'm really gonna pucker it up here, and I'm really gonna get in deep in those cheeks and give that butt a sweet kiss with this one.
Oh no!
Here, you ready? He says, you've written a body of work that reimagines the framework that speaks to all of us. You've illustrated with confidence the landscapes, characters, and machines that inhabit this world, and have given sage advice for those who take up the call of these rituals. Your word has been your bond, and you have delivered more value than you could ever promise. Where do you go from here? How can you keep up this intensity? Is blood wine really a thing, or did you make that up? Either way, it's delicious. That's my buddy Daniel.
I totally made it up.
Now, I read that in such a fashion so that you would understand that he is probably your number one fan and you don't even know it. He's probably more of a fan than Victor, if that's possible. I think if I put you in a room with Victor and Daniel, they would fight to the death over which one of them just gets to be in your presence, gets to bask in your glory. I think that's what would happen.
Good God.
It's getting deep in here.
I think we just wind up drinking like normal people. Yeah, totally made up blood wine. I learned about the Rausch effect. And this is a certain effect that champagne in particular can have on some people, where you get alcohol is absorbed into your brain at an oddly fast pace, and it can make your cheeks feel warm. And one way that you can trigger the Rausch effect is by mixing red wine and beer, because it creates this similar sort of magic alcohol concoction. So I was just like reading that online or something, just kind of whiling the hours away. And I was like, hey, I got some red wine. I got like a 6-pack. I got an afternoon ahead of me here. So that's how that all.
I don't have to be at work.
As far as where to go from here at this level of intensity, that's a damn good question. I would like to start to create things that are wildly different from each other. That's how I want to go from here. So I'm very proud of ICRPG. I want to continue to support it and honestly to play it for years to come. For me, it's like the closest thrill to back in the day when we played Rifts wrong when I was a kid. But I learned so much in this past year that I'm really excited now to just completely change gears and try to reveal different sort of parts of this creative tesseract of like where it can go. And that can include all kinds of different endeavors. So just to let you in on some of my thinking, one of them is something we were talking about pre-show, which is this board game I'm going to be revealing this year called Junked, which people on Twitter have probably seen a lot of my posts about my process working on Junked. But then I've also been thinking about this thing, and I don't know what to call it. I've kind of been calling it the Lonely Road or Legend Quest or something. But it was basically an idea to travel the world and to go to places that are sort of fascinating for the hobby and firsthand experience sort of what the link between history and real culture and role-playing sort of lore really is. And to actually go to these places like some of the fortresses in Portugal, you know, that were taken by Moors and taken by Vikings and taken by the Spanish and stuff, and actually sit on those bricks and like either podcast or do live videos and think about the link between human culture, history, and fantasy and our hobby and stuff like that. So the things ahead are kind of all over the place. I don't know what I will do and what will fall to the side, but I appreciate the kind words. I will work very hard to earn them.
I'm waiting for Victor to read the last one.
Yeah, this last one is from Jason Sunday. He says he hasn't read the ICRPG book, but it sounds a bit like the Cypher system. I get really bored with the Cypher system because you basically roll the same dice against the same DC saves over and over and over. Am I mistaken here?
Do you want me to answer this one? I'll answer this one. F you, Jason Sunday. You're what kind of a jerk question is that?
Read the book first. Come back.
Just kidding. Actually, I don't know. I've never played Cypher System, but I can tell you don't use the same dice over and over again. Hankerin makes bloody good use of the D4, D6, D8, the D12, and the D20. Although you do roll a lot of D20s, there's 4 other dice in this pack that are very well used, mister. And I'm very upset that you asked that question of my sweet, dear old buddy Hank.
I mean, another way to answer the question would be like, with the right dungeon master, that absolutely can happen. I mean, you might get a dungeon master that every single room is a DC of 12, and he cuts the whole game or she cuts the whole game down to just using 2d6 or something, and like, there it is, guys, we're done. You know, like, that could happen. That could happen. But I would advise that you at least read the free quick start before you get too many comparisons going. Mm-hmm. It is free.
We did say it earlier too. Like, even if you never play ICRPG, buy the book and read it, because there is some sweet ass DM stuff in there. One of the prime things that I've been trying to impart amongst the people that I play with is the initiative idea that you've taken, for one simple reason. When I play at Nerd Haven, there's this guy Alex, and he's the outgoing, bolsterous kid, and it's so funny because when we're playing, there'll be a situation, and he'll be like, "I'll pull out my gun and shoot him," and he throws his dice, and he just looks at the DM, And it's like, so it pretty much becomes the Jason and Alex game with 4 people following whatever Alex's crazy mind takes them. So one of the greatest things that you'll pick up or learn inside of ICRPG is this ability, like initiative is foregone. You start at your left, you go around in a circle, sit down at the appropriate spot depending on where you want to go. It's a very simplified way to put it, but the beauty of that system is, as a DM, I interact with the first player. The second guy can play off what the first guy did, and then the third guy can play off either one of those. And you go around in a circle and you eliminate this idea that, or not the idea of, but you eliminate what happens when you have shy people and boisterous, outgoing people. You interact with everybody, you involve everybody in the game, and it's just, and you don't have these things where you're like, oh, you guys walk around the corner to a back alley and this guy pops out and, now you're in a big gang. What do you do? And then everybody sits there in silence for 5 minutes because it's not how you play the game. It's like, Johnny, you're leading this group of, your friends around the corner. And when you pop into the back alley, what are you going to do? And I'm directing it at a player. Then it's me and him
Not
going
at the
at
table.
it. Yeah, and like that for me was worth the $20 I spent on the book alone, because it's just
That's
like
awesome.
It's such a good way of involving everybody at the table. So Jason Sunday, I hope that answers your question. Even if you don't play it, there's so many good nuggets of goodness. Rooms next. The rooms, like, what? How many times have you sat down and it's a toe-to-toe battle. Swing your sword, I hit, I cast a spell, I hit. Inside the book, there's room design where you have pinch points and obstacles to overcome and crevices and stuff like that. And that's another thing that makes me as a DM stop and take notice as to what's going on. And it's like I could be a better DM by just putting a crevice in front of my players and the goblins that are attacking them.
Absolutely. Always put a crevice.
That one thing is just anyways, Jason Sunday.
Just
by
using
the
the timer die. The timer die changed a lot of my games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had used it in various ways, but it never was codified like it is in ICRPG.
Right.
There's 3 good free nuggets of awesomeness right there that you should read up on, Mr. Sunday. Anyways, I do appreciate the question, and I was just messing with you earlier. It is a good one. All right, that's going to wrap up the question section. We're 2 hours almost into this bad boy, and we talked to Hankerin for an hour before this. He probably hates us right now and will never come back, so everybody just say farewell to the man. I feel that was like tears of crying. He's like, I got to get up in the morning, and these just won't shut up.
Into orbit.
Hankerin, thanks for everything you've done. Alex Alvarez, a sweet thank you to you too, mister. We're going to get you on the show one time to smack talk Hank, because I'm sure it was a pain in the ass working with him, but we appreciate everything that you've given us. It's awesome to have you on the show. And this isn't the end. We're going to have you come back and do some other stuff. Great. We're going to maybe not talk about your products, but let's just talk about something else, like that idea that you had last time, where we get together and brainstorm when you're not so tired and falling asleep.
Let's do it.
All right, everybody. Peace out.
Later.
Okay, so we're in the outro. ICRPG Core 2.E20E, ICRPG second edition, whatever you want to call it, is out. I have ordered 3 hard copies, 2 soft covers. I'm going to be giving a bunch away. I'm sending one to my buddy Harrison because he likes this game as well. Keeping a hard copy for myself, one to have some sweet sexy time with, and that just leaves me with 1 extra hard copy. So, here in the Murder Hobo Show, I'm giving it away. After I rub it all over my sweet... No, I wouldn't do that to people. I think there's something about not being able to mail bio stuff, that's right. So, it will be pristine, I promise. But, here on Threats, Treats, and Timers, we're gonna give our first giveaway ever on the Murder Hobo Show Presents Things and Stuff and this is it. So, if you're interested and getting yourself a sweet-ass hardcover of the Black 2nd Edition ICRPG. How are we going to do this, Victor?
So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to put together a PDF template that you need to fill out with your monster. That's right. Whatever monster that you want to come up with in your crazy imagination, or if you just want to steal a few tricks from another game or another place where you've played it and you've defeated it and you really want to bring it to ICRPG, we will be putting out a PDF out on the Google Plus page for everyone to download, fill in, and it'll be form fillable, so you can type it in so we don't have to read people's handwriting. If you've seen Gary's handwriting, you'll know what I mean. So fill that in, fill in the form fields for it, and submit your ICRPG custom monster to the show, Threats, Treats, and Timers, and we'll give you all the Gmail address and all the other places that you need to send them once they're done. Gary and I are going to go through them, kind of select the at random which ones we like the best, or see which ones that come up the best. That's correct. For free, we will ship to you an ICRPG Core 2E copy of the latest books as soon as they get into our hot little hands. So we have a little while. We're going to take, I don't know, Gary, what do you think? We should take a couple weeks to figure this out?
Yeah, we're going to give it a good month. It's going to be 2 weeks before the print shows up at my house anyway, right? So by the time we get the podcast out, we throw it up on G+, we get a little bit of advertisement, and give people some time to think up what kind of monsters they want to submit. What we're going to do with this is, I'm pretty sure when it's all said and done, we're going to try and put these into like what you did with the riffs and sort of make a community monster manual out of the submissions. Maybe, depending on how many we get, maybe we got one listener, and that guy's guaranteed the copy of the book.
Great. So it's going to be 6 pages. We're all going to submit 2 pages each, the new listener, me and you, Gary. So look forward to that.
Frank will win it.
Yeah, probably he draw the best out of all of us. You never know. If Hankerin puts his hat in the ring, I don't know. Can we send him his own book? Is that allowed? So as you know, you guys can reach us at the Murder Hobo Show at gmail.com, or get us over on Twitter. If you can keep it under 140 characters, at the Murder Hobo Show. And of course, you can always reach us over at the Google Plus page for the Index Card role-playing game. Looking forward to putting together this new contest for you guys to be able to win the Index Card Core 2 Second Edition book direct from the printer. So let us know, submit your monsters, and look out for that template. I'll be putting that up a little bit later this week.
Yes, this book will be fresh. It will be uncracked. When you open it, you will hear the spine split. It will be that cracked. Also, be sure to swing by the Murder Hobo Show on Podbean. Check out the show notes for some links to some really cool creative people, places, and things. The Nerds International collection, the Emporium of Peeps, is littered with super talented DMs, guys that have some great ideas, some seriously good content creators, man. We even have like a legit writer. He's actually published material. The one and only Eric Lamoureux, the creator of the famed Forget About It. And he's creating a setting right now called Wise Guys that I'm looking forward to. Hopefully, I don't know if he's going to Kickstart it, but if he does, he does. I'm going to throw in my name and give him a bunch of my money, I think. So,
shut up and take my money.
Yeah, tune in next time. We're going to have another action-packed show. We'll be tackling more of the character creation section that we didn't finish the last time because this book came out and we wanted to talk about the changes in this awesome second edition. That's it. We're done, Victor. Peace out, my friend.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been listening to the Threats, Treats, and Timers podcast. Make sure you guys catch us on our other podcast, The Savage Drifter, and we'll be talking about ICRPG for a long time to come.
All right. Sweet dreams.
Man.
Sweet dreams, my sweet Arizona friend.
Good luck with it, man. You got to cut a lot of that stuff up.
I know, you know I will. I will make us sound like pure geniuses, dude. The Murder Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and education or review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2018, all rights reserved.